And we are live, ready to talk about the Baltimore Ravens as I choke on the little sip of coffee that I had. We do have the coffee in the Green Bay mug ready to go because I am a little bit lagging today, but we are on part 3, breaking down all 32 NFL teams, going through everything I've learned about them throughout the offseason, and finishing by predicting every single game on their schedule. All of this to answer the grand question of will they hit that win total, which for Baltimore is 11 and a half. 11 and a half victories. If you want to take the over, that's a 12-5 team for a team that was beset with injuries last year, that had Lamar one of the worst seasons of his career. The rushing totals was so far down. This team fired their head coach and is bringing in a completely new regime. Have they done enough to hit that over? We're going to go through it all. As you can see next to me, a little PTI rundown of how this show is going to go. We start off with 3 big topics, something that I'm very excited about, something that I'm a little bit worried about, and then something at the end that I am flat out disgusted with about this Baltimore team. And then we go through the roster, position groups, grade each and every one of them. And Baltimore is very unique, very interesting on the way they've built this team. Spent some stuff in the offseason, tried to pull off a Max Crosby trade, and then kind of went back on it a little bit later. And then they took Trey Hendrickson from the Cincinnati Bengals. And so it's going to be interesting to see how it all fits in. And then we land on the fantasy target that I am getting from the Baltimore Ravens. Grade this player on where they would be in best ball and redraft dynasty, and of course, my preferred way to play fantasy football, the guillotine leagues. And today's fantasy target in particular is a guillotine league fantasy target. And then finally, we go through the schedule, week 1 through week 18, where the rest advantages are. We also have an international game with Baltimore with no bye week after it. There's a lot to get into and a lot to decide on a team that has the highest win total or projected win total in the NFL. It's them and the Rams. This team, according to the betting markets, is the AFC favorite to represent in the Super Bowl. Do you believe Baltimore can get back on what they were doing and get back to the good news of the Baltimore Ravens to the top of the league? Was it just a Lamar injury? Was it just a little bit of bad luck? Is Harbaugh the thing that was holding this team back? That's what a lot of the betting markets are telling you, and we're going to figure out if we both agree to it. But this is a live show. We will be covering all 32 teams here. We do have comments coming in. Love the dedication to match the shirt to the background. You're one of a kind with how you think these things through, sir. Great breakdowns, though, buddy. There is a lot to go in, and some of it is also a little bit of happy accident. This was the first shirt on top of all the clean shirts. As I said, we have had a crazy few days here in my own personal life, working a couple of 9 to 5s before I can get home and go live at 6 p.m. Pacific time to try and get all 32 of these teams out. Just got lucky with this one, but I'll take the Baltimore swag on it. Feel free to leave comments if you're watching this live. If you're watching this at a later date, we will be going live mostly during the evenings Pacific time. On the weekends, we'll be doing a couple of teams at once to try and get all 32 before we kick things off. But it starts off, as always, with the good, the bad, and the ugly. And for Baltimore, it has a lot to do with stuff that happened in the offseason, stuff that changed this team. The first one, the good, is Jesse Minter is walking into town. This guy was the belle of the ball in the head coaching carousel, and for a while, people have known that this guy is going to be the next big head coach. And when the Baltimore job came available, Baltimore wanted Minter. Minter wanted this job because he knows the potential of what this team can be. Plus, it's a great organization. You know, you're not going to coach the Arizona Cardinals, no offense to Arizona. Baltimore has a history to it, a fan base to it, a great home field advantage. When you win in Baltimore, it matters. It means something. There's history there. And Minter said that with Lamar Jackson as my quarterback, with Derrick Henry on the team, let's go make it happen. And let's go see if I can bring my defensive expertise to a team that desperately, desperately needs it. Because last year, Baltimore They have a lot of good things going for them, probability-wise. For instance, they were 2-5 in one-score games last year. That usually finds its way back to the mean. They were minus 15 in sack differential, and that's not an offensive line problem, as we'll get into in a second. That's the defense not creating enough pressure with the people that they've had. So they added, as we said, Trey Hendrickson, but also Jesse Minter to try and figure out how to get there because they forced punts at the 30th worst rate in the league last year. They were 31st in sacks per drive last year. This Baltimore team that used to be in the Ray Lewis days, the ferocious defenses of lore. Minter is coming back to try and fix that because this is a team that should be better. They're the third most expensive defense in the league. They shouldn't be 30th in punts per drive. They need to get more out of this team. The bad part is they're the fifth oldest defense in the league. And they're also, as we'll get to the positional grades, not necessarily deep. So Minter has to work with what he has, at least in this first year. But they have playmakers back there. They have people that can do it. I love Hamilton. I think he's one of the best players in the league. I'm excited to see how Minter uses him. But in the end, he's got to bring what he did in L.A. to Baltimore because in L.A., that Chargers defense was first in the league in forcing 3-and-outs, which is an excellent thing to do when you get that defense, the other team's defense back onto the field. They're already huffing and puffing. They got to play Herbert again. Now they got to play Lamar again. If you can lead that team to be top 5 in 3-and-outs in Baltimore, huge win for this team. But even after, if a team had a drive going, they were top 9 in LA, the LA Chargers in points per drive and touchdowns per drive, in turnovers forced per drive and forcing punts per drive. They were a top 9 in all of those stats. Can Minter bring that to Baltimore because he's done 2 straight years in LA and obviously did it at Michigan, even though they may have known the plays that were coming? I hope it's going to work out because I want to see Baltimore get back to having that ferocious defense that everyone's scared about. The bad part, though, is the big man in the middle who's no longer in the middle in Baltimore. That is the center, Tyler Lindenbaum, that went off in free agency, became one of the highest paid players in the NFL, the highest paid center, because Baltimore decided that they wanted to spend that money elsewhere in the Trey Hendricksons of the world and Zay Flowers, who just got a huge new contract. And this offensive line was a huge success for Baltimore and kind of quietly because Lamar, he did have a bad year. He was injured. They had a lot of backup quarterbacks back there. And yet still, when Lamar was playing, this offensive line only allowed the 4th worst pressure rate. Lamar took a lot of sacks because he held onto the ball for a long time trying to make plays, but a lot of the great improvisers do that. The Josh Allens of the world, Jordan Love, Caleb Williams, they all hold on to the ball in the 30s when you're ranking all the quarterbacks. So Lamar did take a lot of sacks, had a high sack rate, but when it came to pressure, especially pressure under 2.5 seconds, which is the natural time for a play to develop, Baltimore was at the top of the league at that. And then in the run game, even though you have Derrick Henry, that I think was first in the league in yards after contact, Baltimore's offensive line was second in the league in yards before contact. They gave Henry that steam to get going, and now the center is gone. And yes, you also lose Daniel Falele at guard, which is a good thing. You've upgraded that with the first-round pick coming out of Penn State. You signed Cleveland's old center to replace Lindenbaum. You also have John Simpson from the Jets coming over. The 2 tackles are really, really good, with Rosengarten taking a next step here. I believe he was ranked in the top 20s in PFF grade. So they have a lot of great players on this offensive line, but did losing the center ruin it all? It's worrisome, and I want to see how it goes at the beginning because if the sum is greater than the parts, so to speak, then Baltimore will be fine. But if that guy was the key to everything, then this team could, if this team's offensive line falls apart, that is a strength of this unit going back down to the mean. That'll hurt everything around it. The ugly, though, is my man Roger Goodell. And listen, this isn't Roger's fault, but I like making him the villain. When we break down the schedule for the Baltimore Ravens, as I already said, they're the 5th oldest defense in the league, one of the oldest teams in the league. Not necessarily a deep team. There's no one behind Derrick Henry that you're worried about. Obviously, Lamar has his backups, but who's the backup tight end after Mark Andrews? They drafted 2 rookies who aren't necessarily ready to play. And then on the defensive side, there's not a lot of players behind the older veterans that are out there. So Goodell, even though this team has a pretty easy schedule on paper, The way they set up this schedule, specifically in the middle weeks, the end of October, early November part of this schedule, it is really, really difficult. Not necessarily the teams they are playing, but how they are playing them. And I have a lot of question marks that we'll cover when we break down this schedule, how Baltimore will survive. Because this team, another probability thing that'll bring them back, they were, I believe, 30th, the third worst team with injury rate. That should come back to the mean. But if it doesn't, and this team continues to get injured, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, because of how that schedule is shaping up, they could lose a lot of games to teams like the Cleveland Browns simply for schedule losses. And when you have an 11.5 number, those schedule losses mean you're hitting that under. Could they still be a playoff team if they win 11 games? Of course they can, but we're looking solely at that 11.5 and how we can get there. But I already talked a lot about the offensive line, so let's break down the position groupings here. And we'll start right there. Obviously, Lindenbaum takes a huge step back, but everyone else on this unit, if Ethan can bring it back, give me one more year, my guy. He almost retired. He didn't know where he was going to play. And also they have some people that could replace him, but right now he's the projected starter at center. I think this team, this offensive line can be really, really good if they stay healthy and if the first round pick is worth that first round pick. He's one of, in my opinion, the best players in the draft. He only fell to Baltimore because he plays an interior O-lineman. If this guy was a tackle, he's the first tackle off the board. But this team together, at least those starting five, I think can be a really successful offensive line. I'm giving it a B+. I think it can be really good. When it comes to the running back position, Derrick Henry, one of the best running backs in the league, obviously, but he has been one of the best running backs in the league for almost a decade. He's getting up there in age. And I think Warren Sharp wrote this stat, and I want to remember it off the top of my head, but age 32 running backs and up, the highest yards per game in a full season was Adrian Peterson, and he only had 65 yards per game. So Derrick Henry should shatter that. But eventually that age is going to catch up to one of the guys who's a bona fide Hall of Famer at his position. And then behind him, it's a bunch of nobodies. You're not scared of Justice Hill. You're not scared of Ali. You're not scared of any of them. And they did lose Keaton Mitchell, as my Chargers best ball drafts have shown me. But behind Derrick Henry, solid B. Because Derrick Henry, again, is an A. But anyone behind him, there's no way you can spell him and be scared. Maybe they pick someone up in free agency, a camp casualty, but I'm giving the running backs a B and offensive line a B+. The quarterbacks is an A because I believe Lamar Jackson, I have on that thumbnail, is Lamar Cook. That's only to get the Baltimore Ravens fans mad at me and try to get a couple of clicks on this video. Lamar Jackson last season, I am fully willing to throw to the injury pipeline. And I am not worried that Lamar's lost a step. I am not worried that Lamar, if he becomes a pocket passer, isn't going to succeed as much. I still believe Lamar Jackson can do Lamar Jackson things, a two-time MVP. The worst year of his career last year, but if you look at those first 3 weeks before Lamar picked up that injury, they scored, I think, over 110 points. The first team in the NFL to score 110 points over 3 games and have a losing record. It wasn't Lamar's fault they started off 1-2. That offense was humming. And Lamar, in those first 3 weeks, was first in yards per attempt. He was first in touchdown rate, and he was third in EPA per dropback. They were slicing and dicing everybody. And then the injuries started. So if Lamar can stay healthy, if he can stay upright, I think Lamar is back on his bullshit, and I think he's just as good as advertised, as he always have been. And I'm giving this team an A because Tyler Huntley's back there backing him up, and he showed again in Baltimore when he had to come in last year. He played so much better than he played anywhere else in the NFL. It's only Baltimore that Tyler Huntley can be a successful backup, but he's the skeleton key to this offense, and I have no worries if Lamar has to miss a game due to an unlucky injury, a concussion, something like that, because I have faith that Tyler Huntley can come in and take the reins and give them a victory. So we have an A for the quarterback room. The wide receivers and the pass catchers in total is where we struggle. I was amazed that this team didn't keep Isaiah Likely. I really was. Obviously, Isaiah Likely signed for probably more money in the New York because Harbaugh went over there. But I was amazed that Baltimore didn't make that more competitive because Mark Andrews' best years are far, far behind him. And he's a great, great player. But the fact that they're relying so much on him, and yes, they did draft the 2 tight ends, but neither of them are really ready to play. Maybe Hibner can do some things in the receiving game out of SMU, but he's not Isaiah Likely. I'll put it to you that way. And I thought they were going to go the opposite route, pay Likely the money, and try to get out of Andrews' contract, and they did not. So Durham Smythe is more of a blocking tight end. Mark Andrews is not the threat in the passing game that he once was. And the only real threat is the guy that they just paid the most money to any wide receiver, and that's Zay Flowers. Is Zay Flowers worth the contract they gave him? I don't know. I might be talking about Zay Flowers in a hot second here when we get to the fantasy target, but if Zay Flowers, he is a very specific wide receiver. He is not Drake London. He is not Nico Collins. He is not Jamar Chase. He is not the boundary guy. He is a guy that at best, I shouldn't say at best, is the prototype gadget player. He's not even Amon-Ra St. Brown, who can live in the middle of the field and cut through zones and take the big hits and be the 3rd and 10 guy at the chains, make the tough catches. That's not necessarily Zay Flowers' game. He is very much a yak monster. He is very much a guy who can get open in the middle of the zone and suddenly turn a 15-yard in route to a 60-yard touchdown. Zay Flowers is a lot of fun and is awesome. Hesitant to believe that he was worth the money that they paid, but that's the market. And if he's the only wide receiver here, the only pass catcher that I'm worried about, because Rashod Bateman and Tez Walker are nobodies. People really like Jacoby Lane out of USC. He's supposed to be making some huge waves in training camp so far. So if he can step up and be a wide receiver too, that'd be huge for this offense, especially if he's more of a boundary guy. But if Zay Flowers is the only one here that worries me at all, this is a D plus pass catching room. And Lamar has made magic happen. We've seen it with Buffalo, we're going to talk about tomorrow. We've seen it with all these great quarterbacks. Everyone but Joe Burrow seemingly has an empty chest of things to use, an empty toy chest when it comes to tools. And Zay Flowers being the only one here, I think Lamar could use a player like a Stephon Diggs, who just signed with another team. I don't think Brandon Ayuk's going to be available. I don't think Keenan Allen's going to be available, but they could have used a little bit of help here, and they're hoping that the draft picks that they spent are the ones that help them, and right now I don't see it. So that's the only thing really holding this offense, otherwise great offense, back. And then we jump to the defensive side of the ball. This is an interesting one because we talked about the age. We talked about how expensive they are. But when you look at that starting roster, you see a lot of potential. A lot of potential. Starting off in the backfield, I love Nate Wiggins as my cornerback. I love Kyle Hamilton, as I already said. I think Kyle Hamilton, if I was building an all-11 defense from the entire league, I think Kyle Hamilton's my safety. Malachi Stark's excellent pick as well to see what he can do in year 2. And then 2 really old cornerbacks that are still playing pretty damn well. Not a lot of depth behind them, as we said, but I think this starting 5 in the defensive backfield is really good. I'm a little bit hesitant to give a Marlon Humphrey anything higher because he has been beaten and gets a lot slower in his old age, but I'm probably going solid B with that defensive backfield. The age on the outside is what's taking me away from giving it anything higher, but I think it's a really solid backfield, and I'm excited to see what Jesse Minter can do with it. When it comes to the pass rushers, the guys that are going to play off the ball, the linebacker room, Roquan Smith is still one of the best linebackers in the game. And now we add Trey Hendrickson in there. Mike Green, the second-round pick from last year, showed some faith. They also made another second-round pick on a pass rusher in Zion Young. I think this is a team that's going to have a lot of rotational pieces, with Trey Hendrickson being the main figurehead on how they can get this guy to the quarterback, because consistently, Hendrickson, not just the sack numbers, it's the pressure numbers, man, because sometimes you can get a lot of sacks on very little pressures, and then that number will come back to the mean. Trey Hendrickson, pressure-wise, has always been excellent in Cincinnati year after year after year, even though there was no one else on Cincinnati to worry about, and Hendrickson still pulled it off every single year. Is he old? Yes. Is he overpaid? Probably. Is that contract too long? Maybe. But for right now, for 2026, I think it's a perfect addition to this Baltimore team that needed someone to scare you off the edge. Is he bad in the run game? Sure. I'll take the rest of this team surrounding him and take Kyle Hamilton to cover for him behind him and just say, hey, Trey Hendrickson, just like Micah Parsons in Green Bay, you do you. We'll figure out everything else behind you. So good rotational pieces, great off-ball linebacker in Roquan Smith. So I'm going with that back part of the front 7. Yeah, I really like it. I'm going with a B+. I am. And again, they have to stay healthy, but I am going with a B+. The interior of the line, this is a team. Matabuke had a terrible injury, took him all season to come back, supposedly fully healthy now. They did get Calais Campbell. They have John Jenkins. This is a very old part of the roster, but it's very physical and very positive. They do everything correctly here, and Minter needs that stuffing in the front. They need to really remember Ted Washington in the old New England Patriots days. That guy who just sits in the middle and then everything is forced to the outside so the playmakers can make plays. I don't know if they have that in this Minter offense, in this Minter defense, I should say. But if Matabuke can get back to what he was doing, then this could be a lot of fun. This is the worst part of the defense, probably about a C minus, especially with the age there. But overall, there's a lot of players here, man. You can see why it's an 11.5 win total for this team. And I'm excited to break down that schedule, but we cannot break down that schedule before we break down the fantasy target, and that is Mr. Zay Flowers. Because if you want to get a Derrick Henry, for instance, obviously we talked about how that Adrian Peterson number is bad for those older running backs and could spell bad things for Derrick Henry. I still think he's awesome, and I still think he's going to do really well behind an offensive line, as I said, number 2 in the league in yards before contact. Lamar Jackson, also a guy that you could spend a later pick on and get him on your team, a higher pick if you're going to draft in like a redraft league like on ESPN. He's much higher on those boards than he is on, say, an underdog ADP. But those are very expensive players to take on your fantasy team. I think Lamar is QB2 overall in ADP, and Derrick Henry is at best maybe middle of the second round. You're going to have to spend to get someone like him. So you're really going to have to throw your dart and hope it works. Derrick Henry, I'm drafting less of than Lamar Jackson in all fantasy formats, but neither of them am I drafting as much as I'm drafting Zay Flowers, because as much as I said he's a gadget player, he doesn't. He's not the traditional boundary receiver. They have to plan things around him. I think Declan Doyle, the new OC, is very excited to use this toy out of the toy chest, and there is no one else on this team that is even going to bother to get targets. Okay, Mark Andrews, as we said, is 10 years older than Zay Flowers. Jacoby Lane could be excellent. He's not going to be biting into the Zay Flowers workload. And this Baltimore team, just like Green Bay with Christian Watson, they fully believe in Zay Flowers enough to pay him top of the market money. That is the team yelling at you, telling you this is our dude. And I'm going to believe it. I didn't look up exactly where he is in ADP, but I know I've been getting him 3rd, 4th, 5th rounds in those, or I guess 3rd rounds in underdog. He's even later in redraft leagues because people don't believe in the little guy, Zay Flowers, little mighty mouse here. But what I really want to focus on when it comes to dynasty, I am grabbing him, especially if you're in a win now situation. When it comes to redraft, when it comes to underdog, I'm definitely grabbing him. But in guillotine, I think he is an absolute smash play because of the way guillotine leagues are structured. I'm going to be hosting a guillotine league podcast. You have to be able to answer every question in your starting lineup. You have to get a quarterback in an 18-team league. You have to get a tight end in an 18-team league. And then when it comes to the wide receiver and running back positions, you have to get dudes that you can trust are going to score immediately. Until Malik Neighbors has shown he's fully healthy, and he has so far in training camp, Malik Neighbors is not getting drafted by me in a guillotine league because I can't start at the top of my draft with a 0. Zay Flowers in a guillotine league is the perfect wide receiver to take because he is one of the highest floors in fantasy football. The touchdown regression is terrible. He's never had more than 5 TDs in a season, even though he's raking in all these targets and these receptions. But his yardage has gone up every single year. He is clearly the number 1 wide receiver here. And if you can't spend the money on a Jamar Chase, on a Puka Nacua, because you're buying, say, a Brock Bowers or someone else to fill another position, Zay Flowers is the perfect answer at wide receiver, because not only does he have the high floor, not only does he do everything correct. I mean, speaking of high floor, I wrote down these numbers earlier. Last year, even with the Lamar injury, only twice was he out of a top 40 scoring week for the wide receiver position. And the last 5 weeks, when Lamar kind of came back and they were maybe fighting for a playoff position, blah, 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 5 straight weeks, he was a top 24 wide receiver. 3 of those weeks, he was a top 9 wide receiver. Those first 3 weeks when Lamar was going crazy, Zay Flowers was also going crazy. I say all that to say, you need Zay Flowers to hit that high floor and guarantee you points to move on so you don't get cut early and you can start to build out the rest of the team. But also, when we look at this schedule and one little click of my mouse away, the start of Baltimore's schedule is the best guillotine schedule in the league. In the league. So if you want to spend early on Derrick Henry, if you want to buy Lamar Jackson, if you want to take a dart on Jacoby Lane or a Mark Andrews as your tight end, Baltimore is the perfect guillotine team because they launch into the season. Let's break down the schedule because, as I said, it's not great in the middle weeks. It's not the most perfect schedule in the middle weeks. Hold on, let me try and figure out how to share my screen. We're still figuring out the StreamYard and how it all works. Now I want to go over here. Thank you. So, as we see on the schedule here, we already gave the win to Atlanta because we did their breakdown yesterday. And I will be having that pretty much if I've broken down a team already, those wins and losses are going to stay on the grid. And then if I change them because I may find something different about a team, I may have a different thought process, then I will go and change it on the other side as well because I really want to have all these win totals, not only have the right amount of wins and losses in every single game, but I also want to make sure that my overs and my unders stay the same because Atlanta, I believe, was one game over. So if this becomes a win or a loss for on the other side of Baltimore, spoiler alert, it's not, then that might change some things on the other side. Long preamble to say as we do more of these, like when we get to Cleveland, when we get to Cincinnati, the Baltimore games are going to be filled out because I already made those decisions here. Now, as you can see on the key, we have a bunch of rest disadvantages coming against Baltimore 2 weeks in a row, week 7 and week 8. They are facing a really good team, a team that they need to beat if they want to win the AFC, that their opponent's coming off the bye week there. They have a later bye week. And I also want to circle that Tennessee game in week 4 because week 3 in Atlanta is in the slippery, slidey world of Brazil. I'm not Atlanta. Week 3 at Dallas is not at Dallas. It's not at Jerry World. It's in Sao Paulo. And then Baltimore does not have a bye week after their international game. They instead go back home to play Tennessee. Still early in the season, but as we said, one of the oldest teams in the league. Could that 10-hour flight from Brazil back to Baltimore hurt them in the preparation for this game? Atlanta in week 5 is fully green because Atlanta, thankfully, is playing their own version of a short week road game here. And then back to Cleveland, another red game in week 6 because we're at Atlanta. This is what I'm talking about when the schedule gets hard for Baltimore. Going from week 3 in Sao Paulo, no rest in week 4. Thankfully, we get Atlanta, but that's at Atlanta on Sunday night. They got to fly home Sunday night, early Monday morning, and then fly right back to Cleveland and play a divisional team that always plays them difficult. So that's a short week road game in week 6. Then right away to Cincinnati and Buffalo, who are both coming off their bye weeks. Thankfully, they get a little bit of reprieve against Jacksonville and LA Chargers, Minter's old team, little bit of rest advantage there. But then it's back to at Carolina and at Houston back to back. At Carolina, short week road game. Carolina and Houston have more rest advantages than Baltimore. So from week 4 to week 12, there are cases to be made for almost every game except for Jacksonville that Baltimore is at a disadvantage, at least when it comes to rest, when it comes to travel, when it comes to where they are in the world. Weeks 4 to week 12. Can Baltimore succeed during those weeks? That will tell the story of the season. Because when you get after the bye week, you can see all those greens coming back to Baltimore. All those greens coming back to Baltimore. They got Tampa Bay with a rest advantage. Their rival Pittsburgh rest advantage in both week 15 and week 18. All those could potentially be cold games, but Baltimore is a team that's built for the cold. They have maulers. They have Derrick and Henry. So can they get to the bye week? Hinting at that 11.5 at the top. Because if they do, that's going to be the one. That's going to be the hammer that we hit the over on. I'm excited to break this down. The over 11.5, as you can see below, we have plus 115 on DraftKings right now. So the juice is to the under. The juice is to them going under 11 wins, and yet they're the favorites to win the division. They're the favorites to win the AFC, and they're plus 1,000 to win the Super Bowl. So it's kind of warring numbers there. Jaguars are no slouch. My friend Vaughn, you're not going to enjoy my Jaguars breakdown. Don't want to spoil it too much. But let's dive in to this schedule and how many wins, how many losses. At Indiana is an interesting one because Indiana, when Daniel Jones was healthy, was one of literally the all-time best advanced analytics offenses in the league. Can Minter stop that? Is Daniel Jones going to be healthy? That's okay. I'm giving them a win. I trust Baltimore more than I trust Indianapolis at the top. New Orleans back at home. Same thing. I'm really excited about New Orleans this year. Like, really excited about New Orleans this year. They're not going to beat the Baltimore Ravens. We're starting off 2-0. And then we're heading to Sao Paulo at Dallas. One of the highest scoring games, maybe, if that Brazil field is not the slick ice that Green Bay and Philly once played on, this could be the highest scoring game of the season. Like, genuinely, I think this could be the highest scoring game of the season, even with Minter. I just don't see a lot of faith in Baltimore being able to cover George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb on this team. I think Dallas is going to be a high-flying offense in Week 3 at Dallas in Sao Paulo. Like, just pop your popcorn. That's going to be electric. I think I'm going to give the upset here because I like Dallas a lot, and I think Baltimore will be rolling, but I think Dallas will be rolling as well. I'm gonna give the upset. I'm gonna give the upset. I'm gonna go with Dallas. Flying back home, Tennessee, as we said, no rest in between. Tennessee is also a team that I think will be stronger. God, I think they'll be stronger. Oh man, this is tough. Because if you look forward, I already have Atlanta getting a W, and then at Cleveland after that, even though, excuse me, it's a short week road game for Cleveland. Cleveland sucks. Cleveland stinks. Lamar's 10-5 against Cleveland in his life, and you could give every advantage to Cleveland. I'm not worried about that game at all. So I'm giving a double loss here to Tennessee, and we're giving the win to Cleveland. Yeah, we are 4-2 heading into Week 7 and Week 8. Cincinnati and then at Buffalo. Both of these teams coming off of the bye. Tough stretch for Baltimore all around. However, Baltimore, Lamar Jackson, I should say. What was the number I had written down? Yeah, he's 11-3 against Cincinnati in his career. 11-3 against Cincinnati in his career. And 7-2 against Joe Burrow. I'm going to think that trend continues. Even with Cincinnati getting that, and then I will give Buffalo the win afterwards. So we have 3 losses early, but we have 5 wins. So this team, if you're taking that win the AFC bet, hold on, let me get rid of the Google slide telling me what to do. If you're getting rid of the if you're getting Baltimore to win the AFC, they are the favorites to do it right now. I would not take it today. I would wait for Week 8 and 9 because if they're 5-3 at this point, they're not going to be the favorites to win the AFC anymore. They're beating the piss out of Jacksonville, though. No offense, again, to the one fan that likes Jacksonville in this chat. I do not believe they are a threat to do anything this year. We do have Mitch in the comments saying that he's personally fading the Ravens this year, buddy. I'm getting there to you. I don't know if I'm fading them yet, but we have 3 losses in the first 9 games and an 11.5 schedule. That means you got to go 12-5 in order to hit this. Back on top, though, we are back on LA. And again, with the rest advantage, I think the Chargers are really, really good. I do think Minter gets the better of his mentor here. Like that little play on words. And I'm giving them a W. At Carolina, and then at Houston. Back-to-back short week road game in Carolina. Rest advantages for both Carolina and Houston. 2 really, really good defense, with Houston probably being the best defense in the league. It's been a while since this old team has had a bye. Oh, man. Oh, man, that's tough. I don't think Carolina's very good, but there's so much rest favor. And at this point in the season, this is a tough one. I think I'm giving the loss to Houston. The Carolina one is the one that I'm struggling with, man. And that's 4 losses on the board. This would be their 5th loss. I think I'm doing it. Again, we have yet to have a bye week. We've been in Sao Paulo. We've been a short week road game twice. We've had to play 2 teams off the bye with a 5th oldest defense. We just had a huge win Monday night, LAC at home. We upset the Chargers at home with Minters, everything going right. And then go to Carolina and get punched in the mouth by a really strong defense and Ted McMillan catching jump balls from Bryce Young. I'm doing it. We're at 5 losses already. But we've hit the bye week. It's not bad. It's not terrible. We're not out of anything. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7-5. We have a winning record and just a cakewalk to the finish. a cakewalk to the finish. I am out on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year, and then 4 straight divisional opponents to end it. As we said, I am see you later, Cleveland. See you later, Cincinnati. I'm going with double wins there. We sweep Cincinnati as Baltimore is wont to do. I like Minter more than I like Zach Taylor. Who knows what Joe Burrow will be at this point. But then it's the double Pittsburgh. Very good news. You have both rest advantages against Pittsburgh, who is also a very old team. Bad news is Lamar is 3-7 against Pittsburgh in his career. But is he 3-7 against Pittsburgh? Or is he 3-7 against Mike Tomlin? Don't know. Don't know, because this is it. This is it. Do they sweep Pittsburgh? Do they sweep their division this final 4 straight? They sweep the division. Yeah, I have them winning every game in the division. Does Baltimore go 6-0 against the AFC North? That convinces me they're going to go hit this win total over. Does Baltimore go 6-0 against the AFC North? Yeah, I think they do. I think they do. I think they do. I have this team going 12-5. I have this team going 12-5 and hitting the over. Do I have them winning the AFC? No. Do I have them winning their division? We'll talk about Cincinnati in a few videos here. I do think hitting that over 11.5 at plus money is the way to go. Now, again, this is something that I would not bet today because, as you see in my schedule breakdown here, if they lose that Dallas and Tennessee game and they're heading into Week 5 at 2-2, that's the time when you can hammer a win total over. Those numbers will be really, really good in your favor at that point. However, when you look at Week 14 to Week 18 after the bye, I understand it's all divisional. I understand it's all potentially cold weather games, but look at those rest advantages against teams that I just don't think are going to be as good. I don't think Pittsburgh is going to be as good. Also very old. I'm going with a 5-game win streak to end the season. Seal the over. Shoot Baltimore into the playoffs as one of the hottest teams in the NFL. Minter, that's a tough start. That's a tough year to start, man. That is not the easiest slate to give a rookie head coach. Man, I'm excited for Lamar Jackson, though. I think he can do it. I think he can do it, and I believe Lamar Jackson is an absolute weapon, and it was injuries last year that hurt him. So we're going to go back to the top here and just wrap up the Baltimore Ravens, who, again, I have going just over that total. So that means I have Arizona going under, 3-win team. I have Atlanta going just over. I think that was 7-10. And then Baltimore Ravens going 12-5. Tomorrow, we are breaking down the Buffalo Bills, a team that I had beating the Ravens right there in that schedule breakdown because I think Buffalo is a lot of fun. And the training camp news out of DJ Moore, he's going to be the best receiver that you've ever seen in Buffalo. Can't wait to break down how that's going to work. But did they make the right move firing McDermott and not going fully anew with that coaching staff? We'll break it all down tomorrow. But if you've been here today, thank you. Give me a like, give me a subscribe, help this channel grow. Excited to continue to break down these teams and get into the nitty-gritty of it all. But that's it for the Baltimore Ravens, and I will see you tomorrow.